Welcome back. You're watching Mirror Now, and we are keeping our eyes on the Supreme Court that has agreed that the CVC should complete its probe against Alok Verma in 10 days. And the inquiry is to be conducted under the supervision of a sitting judge of a Supreme Court. It's rare that we have an investigation that is monitored or supervised by a sitting judge. The CJI Gogoi indicates orally to the government that the Supreme Court hearing, the Supreme Court is currently hearing CBI Director Alok Verma's plea. We must also tell you that we're picking up details of the fact that Nageswar Rao, who is the interim director of the CBI, will not take any decisions for now. Whatever decisions he's taken should be filed before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court also issues a notice to the CBI's Central CVC on both Asthana and Alok Verma's plea. So there are two pleas currently before the Supreme Court. One is obviously from Alok Verma and the second from Rakesh Asthana. Rakesh Asthana's plea being brought before the Supreme Court by his attorney Mukul Rohtgi, former Attorney General of India. Vinay Tiwari is in the studio with me. Vinay, obviously a supervision of a sitting judge of a Supreme Court is very rare. We haven't heard this in several years, in fact.
Very rare, and also carries the maximum amount of sanctity that you could have to a probe, because pretty much this is now a Supreme Court monitored investigation, and that kind of removes all accusations of bias or anything else that would have come willy-nilly if it was done by the CVC or
No, but it's also interesting that right now the Supreme Court has asked that all decisions that have been taken so far by Nageswar Rao as well be brought before the Supreme Court, and he's only been interim for 2 days.
Yes, because there were several people who had raised objections even on Mr. Nageswar Rao's background as well.
Yes.
His involvement with certain organizations, his public appearances, his utterances, a lot of things has been said. Also remember, Nageswar Rao is just an IG level officer, and never before in the history of CBI has an IG level officer been appointed as the interim head. He's way too junior in comparison to the top 2 or 3 in the CBI currently.
In fact, let's go across to our colleague Meenakshi, Bhanja, who's been bringing us all of this information so far. Meenakshi is at Supreme Court. Meenakshi, what's going on at Supreme Court right now? All right, the crucial of obviously hearing that's currently underway, the Supreme Court, is about the legal viability of the government's sort of midnight crackdown on Alok Verma. Remember, the government removed him or sent him on forced leave. And this decision was, took place about 2 in the morning. And the opposition up in arms about perhaps also the timing of the decision, suggesting that because it happened in the middle of the night, maybe it was nefarious. The CBI chief Alok Verma has placed his plea before the Supreme Court. Fali Nariman, who's representing him, submits that the present case is concerned with whether his tenure of 2 years could be breached at any time. Just to explain to our viewers what's really going on here. So, Vinay, obviously the director of the CBI is not a government appointee, and our viewers should understand this. He's appointed by a committee. Now, the argument that Alok Verma is placing before the court is that he cannot be removed without either consultation of the committee or until he's finished his term. The government argues that he wasn't removed. He was just sent on leave. In fact, the CBI, very interestingly, put out another media advisory yesterday saying he is still the director of the CBI, sort of preparing for today's hearing.
Absolutely.
Perhaps.
Yesterday's clarification was obviously to preempt the Supreme Court hearing today, because they were conscious of the fact that they can't make it look like he's been removed, and that's why they said so. But you're right. I mean, but before I say that, Faye, there is one more update that has come, which says actually the inquiry will be by a retired Supreme Court judge and not the sitting court. So Justice AK Patnaik, who's actually now a retired judge, who will hear this. So if I mean, there is some confusion initially, but I guess now it seems that it will be a retired judge. But still, I mean, the fact that the Supreme Court has appointed a retired judge in itself means that they want this to be as impartial as it can be. On Mr. Verma's petition, the crux of the matter really is this, that technically under law, the appointing authority must always be the removal authority. Now, in this case, the action as being...
Forgive me, the matter now has been adjourned until the 12th of November.
Right.
And we sort of knew that this would happen today, that the matter perhaps would get adjourned, and the court would just decide whether or not it was, or how it was going to treat this matter. So the fact that the Supreme Court has sent a notice to the central government on both cases, on both pleas, Alok Verma's plea and Rakesh Asthana's plea, it has also asked for a the entire thing to be completed in 10 days.
10 days.
And that it will be looked at specifically by a retired judge. And the matter is adjourned until the 12th of November. This is the information we have right now. You were saying, I'm sorry.
Yes, just to add to what you were saying,
yes,
so the viewers know, the Solicitor General actually said that the inquiry cannot be completed in 10 days, but the SC overruled that.
Okay.
And they said that you have to do it in 10 days. So that's also significant because the Supreme Court has given a time-bound inquiry period.
So there is a sense of urgency of what this is. And, you know, one of the conversations we were having yesterday, I was having yesterday with Arima Sundaram and Mr. Karthikeyan, who's a former director of the CBI, is how will you, let's assume this is done in 10 days, will you be able to restore these two officers to their former positions without any baggage of what has happened?
Well, you can, I mean, technically the restoration can happen for the director. There is an existing FIR now against the special director. Remember, Mr. Asthana now faces an FIR. Technically, he is now an accused in a case.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's likely to happen anytime soon. Depending on the inquiry that comes, because Mr. Alok Verma personally has no criminal case against him as yet. I mean, there was a move to do that because there were letters written to the CVC by Mr. Asthana. But it's really right now only allegations. And the inquiry that is now going to be done by Justice Patnaik will pretty much settle this battle that is on between the two.
Once and for all.
Once and for all.
Right, Aarti, Meenakshi is standing by. I understand we have her now. Obviously, with so many journalists at Supreme Court, there will be a difficulty there for phone connections and internet connections. But Meenakshi, if you can hear us, we understand the matter has now been adjourned till the 12th of November. Could you take us through the details of the investigation that has been now ordered by the Supreme Court that will be monitored by a judge?
And that's what it has been. You know,
very significant developments here in the Supreme Court. Let me begin by emphasizing the import of a time-bound inquiry. We are bringing to our viewers exclusive contents of what happened inside the courtroom. During the hearing, the CVC sought more time for investigations to be completed into allegations of against Alok Verma and Asthana. But the CGI, Gogoi, made a very, very pertinent observation. He went on to say, and I quote, "We cannot, it's not in the interest of this country," unquote. So the fact that the CGI was unwilling to grant a very long window of time for investigations to continue also is exceedingly significant. Tushar Mehta for the CVC wanted more time, but clearly that is not happening. 10 days is the time that CVC has got to complete these investigations. CVC will be working under the direct supervision of a retired Supreme Court Judge, Honorable Justice AK Patnaik. And that apart, Nageswar Rao, the interim CBI chief, his wings have been clipped to a certain extent. He cannot take any policy decision as CBI chief while the matter is pending in the Supreme Court. All the decisions that Nageswar Rao has taken thus far will be placed before the three-judge bench for further introspection and debate. So for now, these are the breaking news developments from the top court. While the CVC wanted more time to complete this probe, clearly the Supreme Court is not inclined towards it. The Chief Justice of India feels this is not in the interest of the nation, and therefore the probe has to be completed in a time-bound manner.
All right, Meenakshi, many thanks for that update. Not in the interest of the nation, Vinay. This is what the Chief Justice of India said when the CVC asked for more time, saying we cannot complete it in 10 days. So obviously, the understanding that we need to be able to complete this investigation, put it behind us as quickly as possible, is something that the court is very aware of.
Yes, and I think that's very significant. The fact that the CGI refused to give any more time than 10 days also tells you how seriously the Supreme Court bench is viewing this whole matter. The dirty linen, so to speak, is being washed in public. It has completely eroded the confidence of people in a premier investigative agency, at least an agency that is considered premier. I mean, well, obviously a series of events now suggests it's not as premier as it looks.
Forgive me, I'm going to interrupt you. We understand that Vineet Narayan is giving a bite. We'll just listen in.
और इस बीच में प्रेशर बनाया गया है कि जांच पूरी हो जाए दोनों लड़ने वाले अधिकारियों के खिलाफ, अस्थाना और वर्मा के, और नागेश्वर राव को फ्रीडम नहीं है कि वो अपनी मर्जी से सीबीआई को चला सके. तो ये निर्णय मैं समझता हूँ ठीक है. जैसा मैंने लगातार कह रहा हूँ कि जो हमारा जजमेंट था विनीत नारायण जजमेंट 97 का, उसको आज तक लेटर और स्प्रिट में लागू नहीं किया गया है. सभी सरकारों ने दुरुपयोग किया है सीबीआई का. सीबीआई का जो ज़्यादा स्टाफ है वो समर्पित है, ईमानदार है, मेहनत करना चाहते हैं, पर ऊपर के लेवल पर राजनीतिक मैनिपुलेशन होता है. अपॉइंटमेंट्स भी गलत हुए हैं, डायरेक्टर्स के खिलाफ भी भ्रष्टाचार के आरोप लगे हैं। इसलिए एक अपने ही जजमेंट के खिलाफ एक व्यापक जनहित याचिका लेकर मैं अगले हफ्ते सुप्रीम कोर्ट में आऊँगा, जबकि मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा संवैधानिक बेंच का गठन हो और विनीत नारायण जजमेंट को दोबारा से परखा जाए पिछले 21 साल के अनुभव के आधार पर। इंग्लिश में करना है? हाँ जी, इंग्लिश। अरे भैया कौन ने पकड़ ले जाके क्या कर रहा है? हेलो,
In fact, joining us on the show right now is K. Raghothaman, former CBI officer. Mr. Raghothaman, thank you for joining us. If you can hear me, your reaction to what the court has decided, that this investigation must be complete in the next 10 days, and it's not in the interest of the nation that we take any longer than 10 days, that the CVC take any longer than 10 days to complete the investigation.
Which investigation they mean, whether the case against Alok Verma, special director, or the allegation being investigated
Both.
Against the director CBI by CVC?
Both, Mr. Raghothaman.
I'm not able to, whether the FIR registered by that case or the CVC inquiry.
The CVC inquiry specifically into both of these gentlemen.
Oh, against the director only. Acha, acha. That's an inquiry conducted by CBC as they now with the time limit. What the Supreme Court has done is correct, because without going into the main allegation against the special director, the fight between now not CBI versus CBI, it's a CBI versus CVC. So the Supreme Court has rightly told that CVC inquiry, if at all there is anything against Director Alok Verma, it should be completed within this time-bound program. So that is the saving class. That is the saving class, in my view. And absolutely, you can't expect more than this judgment at this stage from the Supreme Court of India.
Right. So, Vinay, you were just telling us that it's both. Both of them have written to the CVC against each other. Hence, both of them will be investigated by the CVC.
Yes. So, the first communication by Director Verma to CVC was when Mr. Sthana was appointed to the CBI. That's when he first wrote about his name having cropped up in the Sterling Biotech case. So, the allegation started when he was appointed. And
then again, when he was going to be promoted,
again he objected to it. Again he wrote to it. Correct.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. So, the stage of promotion to the special director's post, which was pretty much a way of lining him up for the director's job.
But the CVC cleared that promotion.
He cleared that promotion.
So,
absolutely.
would that still be pending investigation?
This will be part of this investigation as well, because there are allegations by both the director and the special director against each other and their probity and their backgrounds. I think Mr. Raghothaman asked a relevant question for which we do not have clarity, which is this, that there is now an FIR against the Director Sthana.
Who's investigating that?
Yes. Will that become a part of this or not? I don't think there is clarity on that, because that's now a criminal investigation. Once you have an FIR, that's part of the criminal process.
Mr. Raghothaman, that FIR, in your experience, who would that go to? Would it go to the CVC, given that it's against CBI officers, or would a team in the CBI look into that FIR?
No, the FIR has been registered by CBI. So, investigation has to be done by CBI. In the CBI itself, they can constitute a special investigation team and be investigated it. So, that superintendence of the investigation of that FIR against Special Director Asthana, that can be supervised by the CVC. That is a superintendence over the case investigated by CBI relating to Prevention of Corruption Act. So, if it is related to Prevention of Corruption Act and it has been registered under the Prevention of Corruption Act, then CVC has got jurisdiction to supervise the investigation registered in the FIR. Otherwise not. Otherwise not. Number one. Number two, I am making a point again. The CVC making a complaint inquiry against the Director Alok Verma ji is unprecedented, and so far the CVC themselves do not have any investigating agencies or any officer, and whom they will take to verify the complaint against the Director CBI. Tell me. And this is not the practice. If you have an allegation, you have received it, the normal course is you have to forward it to CBI. CBI only has to look after the public, any allegation against the public servant. Let it be a Director CBI. That you cannot take suo moto inquiry by the CVC. The superintendence is different from inquiry. That you make it a point clear. The CVC has no role to verify any complaint, and they do not have a staff or officials investigating agency to verify it. How do they verify it? And that is not the precedent ever happened in CBI and so far, to my knowledge. Then how can they do investigation or inquiry? No, sorry, not investigation. How is it possible? So they should, normally when the complaint is coming against the public servant, they will forward it to CBI only for investigation, inquiry. Or you look into the complaint and find out whether there is a prima facie case is there or not. Now, how can they, CVC himself can do it? And that is not the precedent. Number two, they do not have an investigating agency or any police officer attached to CBC.
Yes.
How is it possible? You tell me.
Right. In fact, Mr. Raghunaman, just 1 second, we have Nalin Kohli joining us on the phone line right now, member of the BJP, leader with the BJP, and a lawyer himself. Mr. Kohli, thank you for joining us. Good morning to you. Your reaction to the Supreme Court deciding that this matter should be investigated in the next 10 days under the supervision of a retired judge, and the current interim director will not be able to make any decision without placing it before the court?
I think the Honorable Chief Justice of India has almost instantly pronounced what needs to be done because the matter is important. We do know that when the selection of the CBI director takes place, that selection under Section 4A and B of the Delhi Police Establishment Act, which is the CBI Act, and this is after the Vineet Narayan judgment of 1998, it envisages that the Honorable Prime Minister of India, the Honorable Chief Justice of India, and the Leader of Opposition, they together will select that CBI chief director for a period of 2 years. Now, this being an extraordinary situation where there were cross complaints by the CBI director and by the special director, Mr. Asthana, to the CVC, because the CVC has superintendence over the CBI under Section 8A and B. So in this scenario, it was extraordinary, and on the recommendation of the CVC, both were asked to proceed on leave. Now, today what comes out of the court proceeding is, it needs to be decided soon because it's a critical and an important institution, a matter of national importance. So the Honorable Chief Justice has said, since the complaints are before, and that's what the assumption that I can make, is that the complaints are before the CVC, and there are two vigilance commissioners. This is an independent organization, a critical organization. They will look at it in a time-bound manner. And to ensure that it's done also absolutely in an above-board manner, the Honorable former Judge, Mr. Justice AK Patnaik, will oversee that. The second thing relates to that since there is an interim arrangement, since there is an interim arrangement with regards to the functioning of the day-to-day functioning of the CBI, and in that Mr. Nageswar Rao has been given that interim responsibility, he is not required to take any policy decision because after all it's an interim decision. And with regard to his decisions, that no policy or decision was taken, that will also, I think, be looked into.
Mr. Kohli, the Supreme Court has issued notices to the Government of India, the CBI and the CVC on the midnight crackdown on Alok Verma. What will the government's response be to this notice? What is the government's stand at this point?
Well, first, I cannot speak for the government. I'm speaking as a spokesperson and more as an advocate, as you would have noticed. The second is, it is but natural that notices would be issued. I don't know why is it that a whole lot of people tend to believe that a notice means an indictment. An indictment can only be at the end of the legal proceedings, if at all. A notice is there that if there is any important thing, the court has taken cognizance of it, which obviously in a matter like this would have been taken, and the government now, via the notice, will have the right to put down its response. So a petitioner approaches the court, will always make a petition based on what that petitioner believes is correct, and may also emphasize and make allegations, but those allegations need not be correct. The counterparty who gets notice has the full opportunity to put on record what they believe in via an affidavit is their version of the story. And then the court will obviously look at it on the merits of that.
All right, Mr. Kohli, if you could stay with us for just one moment. Mr. KTS Tulsi joins us as well on the phone line. Mr. Tulsi, thank you for joining us. Your reaction to the fact that the court, like Mr. Nalin Kohli was telling us, has taken a decision for a speedy investigation that will be monitored by a judge, but has not stayed in any way the action taken against Alok Verma.
No, they have. I think it's a very strong indictment to the government because one, now monitoring by a judge of the Supreme Court, and I don't agree with this, that this notice has been issued so that the other party can counter. The other party has already filed an application in which all the allegations are there against the then director. So it's not that the court is oblivious of the allegations and counter allegations. They're both there before the court, and they have passed this order to ensure that the independence is not taken away. So the director can only be a caretaker. He can't take policy decisions. And all the decisions that have been taken ever since he took over, they have to be given in sealed cover to the judge who's been designated for the purpose of monitoring.
Mr. Kohli, do you want to respond to that this decision made by the court is an indictment to the government?
No, I will not go by that. Mr. Tulsi and I will respectfully disagree on this. He's a senior colleague of mine at the court. But the way I look at it is, and that's my learning, that at the end of the day, an indictment only takes place when a judgment comes out. Before that, I mean, Mr. Tulsi is also one who practices criminal law. If you go by that presumption, that if the convict gets relief at the High Court, and then the Supreme Court issues notice to the government or the state against that, it does not mean that the convict has become guilty. The presumption of law is going to be always innocent unless proven guilty. So I'm not going to turn criminal jurisprudence on its head. But in terms of this, I look at it that such a matter had to in any case go, because I pointed out under Section 4A and 4B of the Delhi Police Special Establishment Act, you had to, when the Honorable Prime Minister, the Chief Justice of India and the Leader of Opposition are involved in that selection process, how can this matter not reach the court? But in any way, has the court reversed what has happened? It hasn't. It has said that there are investigations that need to be done. It has said do it in a time-bound manner. Has it said that the interim arrangement has to be dispensed with? It has not. It has, on the contrary, said that the interim arrangement must not go into policy area, which also I would say is a good assessment, because that is not a permanent arrangement. Policy should be done by one who's in a permanent arrangement.
Mr. Tulsi?
No, it's not an ordinary criminal case that the court is considering. The court is concerned only about the independence of the institution. For 20 years, the court has been trying to safeguard the independence of the institution from the political masters. And obviously, they wouldn't have taken this step unless they are disturbed about the developments.
Yes.
What is the need to have a midnight coup? Why did the entire thing have to be done in such a manner that the orders come at 1:30 and then they have to be implemented within an hour? It's only the Supreme Court. Why could they not call the meeting of the committee and then take a decision? No, they won't. They wanted to issue the order at midnight. The cabinet also meets perhaps after midnight, and implement there and then, so that it's a fait accompli. It's this cloak and dagger thing. Policy of the government is very disturbing.
Mr. Kohli, I also want to ask you about the 4 IB officials who were...
I will like to also respond to what
Okay, go ahead.
Tulsi has said. Again, I will respectfully disagree, because I think the scheme was very clear. The act is very clear. If the court had a contrarian view, it would have led to a reversal of what happened. There is no reversal. And that's the ground reality. On the contrary, there is... So, 1 minute, sir. I will, sir. Then I'm sure you may want to respond. So there is no reversal in terms of the interim arrangement, and there is no reversal in terms of the asking both the director and the special director to proceed on leave. They both will continue to be in the position they are. The interim arrangement continues with the restriction that no policy decision should take place. And the third part is the investigation, which should be taking place, has been fast-tracked given the importance and the criticality of the institution and the allegations. So that takes place where it is. With regard to the midnight coup, we've debated this. But in any case, as a matter, just to put it out to your viewers, that yes, there is an interim arrangement where there is a fixed tenure of 2 years. It doesn't mean that nothing can happen within that 2 years if an emergent or a critical situation emerges. For example, assume there is any post, forget the CBI, where there is a 2-year period which is fixed. This is important, Faye, just let me finish. There is a 2-year period that is a security of tenure. Now, suppose in that, whoever the incumbent is, That incumbent suffers a nervous breakdown, has unsound mind, commits a murder.
One second, but Mr. Kohli, I have to argue that none of those things have happened. Prashant Bhushan speaking on the lawns of the Supreme Court. I just have to toss over to that and we'll come back to this conversation. Let's listen in.
अब जो CBC ने इंक्वायरी करी है वो 2 हफ्ते के अंदर खत्म करी जाए और उसको सुपरवाइज एक रिटायर्ड.
All right. You're back with Mirror now. The Supreme Court has heard a petition filed by CBI Director Alok Verma challenging the decision of the Government of India to divest him from his duties and send him on forced leave. The Supreme Court has ordered a time-bound conclusion of the probe against CBI Chief Alok Verma and directed the CVC, which will investigate all charges of corruption, to complete its probe within 2 weeks. The probe will be conducted under the supervision of former Supreme Court Judge AK Patnaik. The top court has also issued a notice to the CBI, the CVC and the Government of India over that midnight crackdown of Alok Verma. Meanwhile, all decisions taken by the interim chief, Nageswar Rao, will be placed under the top court's scanner. The Supreme Court has also ordered that Nageswar Rao not take any policy decisions as interim chief of the CBI. You were saying something about 10 days?
Yeah, so I mean the clarification has now come. The inquiry period is 14 days.
It's 14 days.
It is 14 days. I think that clarification is important because they're getting 2 weeks to inquire. But the one point, Faith, that you mentioned, which I think is most critical, is if the court has now said that all decisions by Nageswar Rao from October 23, the day when he was appointed as the interim director, means that the biggest controversy in this, the side controversy in this, was the transfer of the 14 other officers, because they technically were not at war with each other at all.
So actually, so if you just put that timeline there, so first the CBI chief and the special director were removed, then these transfers were actioned. Right. So technically they would carry the signature of Nageswar Rao.
Yes, it was. Yes. So in fact, when Nageswar Rao took over that job at 1 in the morning and under heavy police escort, I mean a lot of people in that area are now confirming that there was a heavy Delhi police escort which actually escorted him inside the CBI headquarters so that there is no other resistance that comes in. The first order that he issued, one of the first orders, was the transfer of these 11 or 12 officers. Now,
so tell me something, and I'm just asking because I believe these are questions citizens would ask. These are questions popping up in my mind. You walked into the CBI headquarters at 1 o'clock in the night with a list of names of 14 officers and transfer papers and orders ready. Now, for both the director and the special director, they weren't removed until 2 a.m., which means that this was already a plan that was locked in, sort of ready. 14 names wouldn't have been easy to draw up.
Yes, so can't say for sure the timing because he went into the office at 1, but what time the order was typed, we don't know. But clearly, if you just see who those 14 officers are, those are all members of a particular unit, and that particular unit was investigating a particular case against Mr. Asthana. So, unfortunately, in fact, this is something, if you remember, Faye, we discussed the other day. Unfortunately, this order has almost sealed a widely held public perception that officers within the CBI, much like other police forces, work as lobbies and loyalists rather than officers. Now, if you only remove one side of them and not the other, here's
the other question I have for you. Now, there was an FIR against Rakesh Asthana. He was being investigated. So, you've removed Alok Verma, you've transferred all 14 of his investigators. Can this be argued in court as government interference into an investigation?
Perhaps yes, because obviously if there's a criminal investigation that has been ordered by the chief and you remove the people investigating this case, it is in many ways an interference.
Yes.
That's an argument.
Vinay, in fact, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, former Union Minister, Finance and External Affairs, joins us on the phone line. Mr. Sinha, this is Faye D'Souza from Mirror Now. Thank you for joining us and giving us your time. We understand that the Supreme Court has issued notices to the Government of India, CVC and the CBI for that late night action against Alok Verma. But the opposition also is making allegations that a lot of this is in reaction to an FIR filed by yourself and two other gentlemen, Mr. Arun Shuri and Mr. Prashant Bhushan, against the government in the Rafael deal. Now, there's no evidence that investigation was ever begun or opened by Alok Verma. But what's your reaction right now to what the Supreme Court has said?
I'll not comment on what you said just now because I'm not aware of the action being taken on our complaint by Alok Verma, the CBI director. But be that as it may, this order which has been passed by the Supreme Court today is important in many ways. First, it is only an interim order. They'll hear the matter again on the 12th of November. So it is an interim order. Second, they have directed the CBC, who was, delaying the inquiry against Alok Verma to complete it within 2 weeks under the supervision of a retired Supreme Court judge. Now, this is very significant because this is a vote of no confidence in the CBC. And a timeline, and we'll know what the result of that inquiry has been. 3, they have not entertained the petition of the Special Director, Asthana. 4, they have issued orders that the interim director will not take any policy decisions, and the decisions taken by him after he assumed charge would be looked into by the Supreme Court. They have asked for all those decisions taken by him to be submitted to the Supreme Court in a sealed cover. Now, therefore, if you look at the spread of this or the impact of this order, it is quite significant in the interim. We will wait for the final hearing on the 12th of November and the final verdict of the Supreme Court. But there is no doubt that the present order is a slap in the face of the government.
Mr. Sinha, I also want to understand your response to the manner in which the government has handled this entire issue from the day that broke out that the two chiefs of the CBI, the number 1 and number 2, were at loggerheads. Would you believe that removing the two of them at the in the middle of the night was the right thing to do?
No, it was not the right thing to do. The government has handled the whole issue very clumsily. Even if we don't go into the past about how Shana was appointed, etc., etc., the tension between the chief and his deputy was quite palpable. It was well known that they were not pulling along. And you were aware of the fact that the CBI director, Alok Verma, had told agencies that Asthana cannot represent the CBI in various matters. So this was what was happening. The government should have intervened in good time, at the right time, to stop this. But obviously they didn't do that. Second, that the allegation, counter-allegation, FIR, etc., made it very, very ugly. And the government let the situation drift. What should have the government done? The government should have gone to the one that they should have asked the CBC to immediately inquire into the matter and tell
actually the DGP of Punjab, so he's a very senior officer.
One of the things that's also come up is in the FIR that was filed by Sana Satish against Rakesh Asthana, he talks about two middlemen. These two middlemen, we understand, are children of a former RAW officer.
Yes, former RAW chief.
Former RAW chief.
Former RAW chief.
So it's, so I'll tell you what people are currently asking, Vinay. They're asking this. Is this was it always this bad and we're just finding out? Or have things actually gotten this bad?
No, it was always bad. There is no question about it. There is this existence of a Delhi Durbar. There is a cabal that exists in Delhi. It's existed for a very, very long time, where there is a series of middlemen. At one point of time, they were caricatured as safari wearing man paraka dabba holding officers. But that's not, and briefcase. And briefcase. But that's the quintessential image. They are actually more sophisticated than that. But there is this huge cabal or Durbar that exists in Delhi, who have such huge tentacles. They influence transfers and postings. They influence outcomes of certain investigations. They can become barriers in investigation. They are the types who you will see hosting parties in five-star hotels regularly in Delhi. And that Delhi Darbar exists. It's a reality. In fact, ironically, the very reason why you see the current PMO has brought in a lot of officers from the Gujarat cadre into their core group. The PMO has a lot of officers from Gujarat. The Home Ministry has a lot of officers from Gujarat. One of the reasons is because the BJP was aware of the existence of this cabal or this darbar that exists. And this was their way of trying to break it. You can't, I mean, possibly can't break one lobby with another lobby. I mean, that's part of the problem. And that's what happened. And that is one reason why Mr. Asthana was being pushed to succeed as a director. Because clearly, in fact, in this case, Faye, the canteen in charge of the CBI headquarters was a man involved in a lot of cases. He was one of the middlemen. And this is not the only canteen in charge. Ironically, there was one canteen in charge at the Tisari Courts complex as well, who was once caught doing exactly the same thing. So you can see,
this just goes to show that obviously there are louts and there are middlemen to get you that canteen job, because even being in the canteen of the CBI headquarters in Delhi is a powerful position. And every part of Delhi is sort of stacked up that way.
Very powerful position. It's a very powerful conduit for a lot of activities. Also remember, currently, it's very difficult to access that building physically. So the physical access to CBI is extremely difficult. You need somebody physically inside to carry out a lot of information relay jobs, to actually be a courier for a lot of information, for papers to be ferreted out, for information, sensitive information to be leaked out. That's how that Delhi Darbar operates. And unfortunately, that rot is now so deep that no matter which government comes to power, it seems they almost seem either helpless in controlling it, or ultimately sometimes even succumbing and becoming victims of this. I mean, Mr. Subramanian,
are you tempted to write a script?
I'm sure there are a lot of scripts already being written on this already. I mean, this is like a Bollywood potpourri.
This should be a potpourri.
This involves 4 premier investigating agencies. It involves the CBI, it involves the IB, it involves RAW. And it involves the CVC, it involves the court now, it involves multiple political parties.
Action BS, suspense BS, you just have to add the romance.
You have the romance, yeah. There was action on the street too when the officers
action on the street. Yeah. And that visual, I'm sure people have watched over and over again, because it's shocking. You expect also just a quick, and you know, sometimes it's important to spend some time as a background at this visual, Vinay. The IB, the Intelligence Bureau. For the uninitiated, what is the Intelligence Bureau meant for? What are they supposed to actually be doing? What is their purpose?
So, look, in this case, I mean, my personal opinion, and having seen how they operate over the years, I think both sides got it horribly wrong. One, IB is not exactly the smartest of organizations. I mean, however, politically incorrect, yes, politically incorrect maybe to say, but they can be fairly amateurish in certain situations. Now, what is right, and I think where we must agree, that the IB routinely is spread out in the New Delhi area. They are there. They are there outside the high commissions and embassies that are there in Chanakapuri. They also fan out in most of the areas in New Delhi area, because that area in Delhi houses the most important people in the country. There's no question about that. Having said that, Mr. Alok Verma's side, how they got it wrong was to drag IP officers like this in public. And then their plea was that we found certain people sitting suspiciously in a car, and hence we are supposed to protect. We had to nip this particular threat. If you have a threat from somebody, the last thing you will do is to drag that person inside the house where your protected person is based. Yes. That you won't do. You will take him away from there, not bring him inside. Yeah. So clearly,
bring him closer to the target.
Closer to the target. So this was poorly handled, both sides. Obviously done publicly, deliberately, so that it becomes public that they were being snooped upon.
So are the IB? So we have the CBI, we have the IB, we have RAW. Are these the smartest, coolest, sharpest officers we have in the country?
Not always, but I can tell you IB officers routinely even arrive at certain press conferences, for instance. I have personally been in many press conferences in Delhi where once we come out, they accost you at the gate and say, "Sab andar kya hua, zara thoda bata do aap." Because that's their responsibility. They are supposed to report back to say what really happened. And they are there in most of the events, especially those which are attended by political opponents, where there are people who somebody wants to know what's happening. They're routinely there. They're there in 5-star hotels.
So the intelligence they gather, what is this intelligence meant to be used for national security, for internal security? What is it used for?
On paper, yes. On paper, the IB is supposed to
be... What is it actually used for?
Actually, it is really information about whatever you think is necessary for you to carry out your governance. Now, that would also mean, infamously, if you remember, Prem Singh and Raj Singh, the two state intelligence bureau officers who were standing outside Chandrasekhar's house, Rajiv Gandhi's house when the government brought down, were also doing political snooping. Now it's an open secret in Delhi that IB does political snooping, and it certainly tries to know and find out what's happening in the other side of the divide.
In fact, I do want to go across to Aarti, who's standing by in the news pit. We understand that the protest that was begun by the Congress against the removal of the CBI chief has now begun to pick up some steam at this point in Delhi. Aarti, could you give us any update of what's actually going on in Delhi and the news that's coming in at this point?
Well, we know that Congress President Rahul Gandhi was supposed to be participating in these protests outside the CBI headquarters in New Delhi, but so far we're yet to see him there. But there are protests, sporadic protests across the country, and there are visuals, of course, coming in from Lucknow, where there are Congress protests happening. Also earlier today we saw some protests coming in from Bangalore and Chennai as well. So small protests across the country, but the main headquarters, the protests outside the CBI headquarters is yet to commence.
Protests outside. Okay, those are visuals that are coming in right now, and we are trying to get in touch with our reporters in Delhi, but we understand that phone connections, like always, are a bit of a challenge. Meenakshi is ready. All right, so let's go across to Meenakshi right now. Meenakshi, what do you have for us? What update can you give us about what's going on in Delhi right now?
Well, Faye, we have been at the helm of breaking news as it was happening inside court, and we were the first to report on as to how the Supreme Court has ordered for the CVC to complete probe in 10 days' time. We were explaining to our viewers the import of a time-bound probe in this case, because remember, the probe could have very well gone on for a month or maybe 2 months, and in that time, it would have been time for Alok Verma to retire. That is clearly not going to be the case, and we saw Tushar Mehta, Solicitor General for the Government of India, make a very, very fervent pitch in the top court asking for the Supreme Court to extend time. Since we have not procured a copy of the order, but we have been given to understand that instead of 10 days, the Supreme Court has relented and extended the time period for completion of probe to 14 days. Even that, is quite a big deal, because very soon there will be quietus or closure to this allegations against Alok Verma. And that apart, the significance of interim CBI chief Nageswar Rao, his wings being clipped, that is hugely important, because any policy decision that he has taken thus far is going to be a subject matter of judicial scrutiny. Each and every transfer that he has ordered or which has happened in his jurisdiction will be under the Supreme Court scanner. And not just that, he has also been asked to not take any further policy decisions till the Supreme Court is seized of the matter. That apart, we've heard from the Congress party, Randeep Singh Surjewala has upped the ante for the Congress party on this one, and it is ambitious for the Congress at this juncture to want to capitalize on all that is happening in the Supreme Court. The Congress is looking to posture this as a triumph of sorts, but these are interim directions, Faye. And the noteworthy observation today, which is a takeaway from the Supreme Court of India, is that of Honorable Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, when he says a protracted time period for investigations into this case is something which is against the nation. So if you look at the subtext, that is also significant. That is also sending out a very, very terse message to the Government of India.
All right, Meenakshi, thank you for that update. In fact, here's an interesting observation from this Chief Justice, and Aarti's just given us this information. No Diwali for the CVC and the CBI, he says, because apparently initially the Supreme Court asked for 10 days for the investigation to be completed in 10 days. The SG Tushar Mehta, who argues for the government, said that 10 days is too short. Besides, Diwali is coming up in between, and the Chief Justice of India said Diwali is just one day. Besides, there's no Diwali for the CVC and the CBI. And for the media also in some cases.
Every case.
But in every case. But it's tough talking though. He's not taking this, lightly. He didn't give in to a lot of the demands made by the government. He was tough.
He was very tough, and I think that's how it should be, because that's perhaps the only hope we've left, where the Supreme Court seems to be now running is 75% of what governance should actually be doing. I mean, there's no aspect of Indian systems where the courts are not at to step in.
Just last night, we had a lawyer in the 2 nights ago, we had a lawyer in the studio who said, you want to decide on Sabarimala, you go to the Supreme Court. You want to decide on firecrackers, you go to the Supreme Court. You want to decide on the CBI, you go to the Supreme Court. So you're right. So much of the work that ought to be done by government and governance is being done by the Supreme Court.
Yes, unfortunately, there is one argument people are furthering, which is that this is judicial overreach. But the judicial overreach is only happening because somewhere the governance or the systems possibly may be failing us, because ultimately the Supreme Court has to arbitrate on any matter constitutional. And if there is a violation prima facie, they will arbitrate. There is no question about that.
Yes.
So,
and interestingly, we had KTS Tulsi arguing that you made those moves in the middle of the night because you knew the matter would wind up in Supreme Court and you wanted a fait accompli, which is basically you go to court and say it's already done. The court then has to reverse it, and the court doesn't normally reverse something unless it has heard all sides.
Talking to Mr. Nalin Kohli, that was as much a spin as anything else. The fact of the matter is that courts will obviously give some time for responses. If the order is interim status quo, it's also not agreeing with what the order is. So in fact, they are just saying inquire and it can well be reversed on November 12th as well. We don't know that. So there is nothing should be read in what the court said today in terms of for or against anybody.
And obviously, given the fact that everything in Delhi is a political fight, we've seen it happen more often now than ever before. 6 months before less than 6 months before an election. When we look at the visuals we're looking at on our screen at this point, this is the Congress party-led opposition out on the streets protesting the action taken against the CBI chief. It does look more like a celebration than a protest, though.
Yeah, it does. And I can see one guy is actually holding a cutout of a Rafale. I don't even know if it's actually a Rafale cutout or some random plane that they're carrying, but they have one. But look, I mean, the timing of it is actually the more interesting, because now you are heading into elections, which is few months away from national elections. Clearly, the Congress is hell-bent upon linking this to a larger issue. And I guess that's where you see this public drama that you now watching.
In fact, the people who are running on the streets should be told that Delhi's AQI is hazardous at this point, and it's not good to either walk or run in this quality of air. But you can see that it is turning out to be a security nightmare, because they are in the part of the city that is normally sanitized.
Yes, this is the most protected part of Delhi, the New Delhi area, because all the minister's house and bungalows, everything is in that part of the country.
Right, and those are live visuals coming to you of the Congress party that has, that's Rahul Gandhi. Okay, so security nightmare for Rahul Gandhi's security, they're used to it.
That's absolutely, I mean, the SPG never likes all these things. When you get out, I mean, this is an out of control.
When he just gets out of the car and walks off like that?
Yes.
And you can see they're not happy. Whatever rope barrier they use now has been rendered useless. He has walked into the crowd, and Rahul Gandhi is leading a protest, we understand, against the action in the CBI, against the director of the CBI. It's chaos, really, in New Delhi. Our colleague Aishwarya Paliwal is at, we understand, CBI headquarters. Aishwarya, what can you tell us about the protest that the Congress is starting in Delhi?
Well, Faye, I am standing outside the CBI headquarters, and the protest has already started. What we are made to understand is that in some time the protest should be reaching this CBI headquarters. Here also you can see how they have cornered off this entire area, and you can see how there is a huge police deployment just to make sure that things don't go out of hand. Rahul Gandhi is expected to reach this place in some time. We are expecting crowd to turn out in hundreds here, but security here is extremely tight, and both these ways are in fact cornered off.
All right, Aishwarya telling us, so this protest, which is already seeming fairly ruckus, to me at least, is headed towards the CBI headquarters.
Yes, which is close to Lodi Road, which is actually one of the most prominent areas. So they have a new building now, and that, in fact, one of the jokes in Delhi currently is that ever since CBI moved into a new building, every single director has come under a cloud. So from AP Singh to Ranjit Sinha to now Alok Verma. So a lot of them believe that particular building doesn't have good vastu.
Maybe it is Vastu Puja and a Havan perhaps to settle it. So we understand that he's headed towards the CBI headquarters. Visuals on your screen at this point. And the police has been prepared at CBI headquarters from early morning. There are barricades put up. There's a heavy police bandobast. We're going to keep monitoring this live frame as it comes in. And our reporters are telling us they expect hundreds of people. The Congress party is also organizing protests in front of every CBI office in various cities. But this will obviously be the biggest one.
This will be, and this certainly will be the biggest one. And also remember, politically, I mean, not in terms of numerically, but politically, Mamta has sent 2 of her MPs to join this protest. So she's also making a statement by publicly making her party members join this particular protest.
Well, it is an opportunity for the opposition, which is what a lot of the analysts have told us in the last 48 hours or so. The government's handling or mishandling of the situation, however you want to see it, has allowed the opposition tremendous opportunity. Not just in the removal, the accusations being made back and forth, the fact the matter has gone into Supreme Court, and then those IB officials, you've just handed it to the opposition on a plate.
Yes, and I think a lot of the politics now, especially in the last 7 to 8 years, is about narrative building. And I think both sides know that it's about narrative building. Facts are a casualty again on both sides. It's not as if everything that the opposition is saying is absolutely correct in facts. Neither does the government say everything accurate in facts. But the part and parcel of the concept of narrative building ahead of elections means that when you have a situation like this where your premier investigating agency is at war, parties will do anything to link it to alleged corruptions, to alleged big scams and all kinds of things, and which is why you see Rahul Gandhi repeatedly mentioning Rafale, even though there is no real evidence of that as of now. In fact, yesterday the CBI issued an official denial saying there was no Rafale file with the CBI chief.
We just lost that shot, but in Mumbai, the Congress was protesting in front of the CBI office in Mumbai. They've begun detaining them and taking them into preventive custody. We'll try and get you that visual as well. But we understand this is Deen Dayal College where Rahul Gandhi is right now. And that chaos that we're witnessing on the streets of Delhi is outside of, there it is, that's the live visual, Deen Dayal College.
Yeah, that's actually Dayal Singh College. It's not Deen Dayal, it's actually Dayal Singh College. Dayal Singh College is one of the colleges of the Delhi University's North Campus. It's very close. I mean, Dayal Singh College is pretty much opposite the CBI headquarters. I mean, just a few hundred meters away.
With this, I mean, given the experience of the Delhi police, this is not a crowd that should be too difficult for them.
Not at all. Delhi police is very well versed with handling crowd. In fact, the New Delhi district is specifically meant only for crowd control because it only has the VVIP areas there.
And so they're still in the VVIP area?
This is still the VVIP area. This is the area where a lot of important buildings and residences exist.
Okay, so that protest, Rahul Gandhi leading the Congress protest, and interestingly, they waited until after the Supreme Court had given, its sort of instructions and its interim instructions to the government of India, and then decided that they were going to start off this protest.
Yeah, so Congress is learning rundown management as well. I mean, much like the government, they do understand that at that point of time, channels would be busy with the outcome of the judgment.
Yes.
And that this visual will get crowded out.
All right, so that's the visual, and like we said, our colleague Aishwarya is at CBI headquarters where this protest is headed at this point, and we'll continue to bring you that live visual as it comes in. I believe that's Ashok Gehlot marching with Rahul Gandhi. Of course, I'm assuming government will just turn around and call this a nuisance.
Yeah, they will. One thing going in favor of the protests is Delhi is now way more pleasant than what perhaps Mumbai is. The weather in Delhi is now way more pleasant, the early onset of winter, and that's allowing a midnight march to actually happen with a little more comfort. Otherwise, some of the senior Congress leaders are not exactly known to step out in peak heat in the last few years or so.
Without their air-conditioned cars. So there you can see that protest is now headed towards the, towards the CBI headquarters. Do we have Aishwarya live? All right, let's just cut across to Aishwarya. Aishwarya, could you take us through what sort of police bandobast has been created at the CBI headquarters, please?
Well, there is a lot of police bandobast being done here. I'll ask my camera person to give you a 180-degree view of exactly what kind of security measures we are seeing here. This is the gate of the CBI building, the new CBI building you can see behind. And look at the kind of barricading that has already taken place here. Close to 200 policemen are already being deployed. On the other side of the road as well, you can see how policemen are just standing. They are waiting for the protesters to reach they are waiting for the protesters to reach this particular point. We can also see barricading being done at both the ends of this road as well. But what we are made to understand at this point of time is that there could be some kind of struggle that could take place between the protesters and the police personnel. But one thing that police personnel standing here have told us is that no matter what, they will make sure that this barricading, the one that leads to the CBI headquarters, is not broken. And we could also see the number of policemen increase within some time right here outside the CBI headquarters.
Well, that's very interesting. We're setting up for a face-off, Vinay.
Yeah, so look, I mean, to be honest, a lot of this protest marches and jostling at the barricades is done, believe it or not, on mutual consent as well. And there is a tacit understanding between protesters and sometimes often the local police, the DCP, that they'll allow some bit of jostling to happen. That is why you see there are multiple barriers, layers that are made. There is a first barrier, second barrier and a third barrier. And the inside story of all of this is that the first and the second barrier is actually meant to be broken.
So what you're suggesting is that all of this is being done for the benefit of the media. I don't know whether to be flattered or offended.
It's the oldest secret in Delhi. I'll tell you, there is a very legendary protester in Delhi, a person called Paramjit Singh Pamma, who used to be an Akali Dal leader who would protest on everything. I mean, he was always on Parliament Street. He used to pay off the water cannon guys to ensure that they open the water cannon, because the water cannon makes for good visuals and it also makes for front page pictures in newspapers. So they would get upset if the water cannon was not put. So protests in Delhi, especially on Parliament Street and in New Delhi areas, are also sometimes done for cameras.
But we also understand that Sanjay Nirupam of the Mumbai Congress has been detained by the police, taken into preventive custody there. These are visuals coming in from Mumbai, where the Congress was holding a press conference. I can see, Congress leaders there holding a protest outside the CBI office, and they've been detained by the police. Mumbai police also doesn't have too much patience for this sort of thing. So you can see they've immediately been removed.
Yes, and I guess that's especially in Mumbai, I mean, this kind of protest will throw half the city's traffic out of gear in any case. Yes. So it's even more important in Mumbai, perhaps.
So obviously this is perhaps what's going to play out in Delhi as well, as we see that protest continue to proceed towards, and it looks like they're nearly there. The continued protest towards the CBI headquarters, where, like Aishwarya was telling us, the police has said that they will do whatever it takes to make sure that that barrier at the gate of the CBI headquarters is not broken, and the protesters led by Mr. Rahul Gandhi don't make it to the CBI headquarters. We're going to take a very quick break here on Mirror Now, but we'll come back and we'll stay with this live visual and what's happening in New Delhi right now.